We're going to mix this one up, ladies and gentlemen. I know we've had a ton of requests asking for a third round reversal, so that's exactly what we are going to go ahead and do here, especially since we kind of cheated. We gave ourselves the number 2 overall pick so we can lock in one of Allen or Mahomes. But I personally don't have a massive preference one way or another on a third round reversal. I know a lot of people think it makes it more fair because if you have a team like what we're about to build at 2, where you get the significant edge of taking a player like Patrick Mahomes, obviously you're in an interesting spot that, I don't know, I mean, you are just at such an advantage in comparison to the other teams that you have at 9, 10, 11, 12. So you kind of want to go through and find a way to make it fair. A third round reversal sounds like maybe it works. I would say the third round reversal, maybe it'd be a little bit more impactful if instead of us getting the very beginning of the 4th round, if instead the back half of the draft got the beginning of the 4th, where we essentially got the 102, but because of that, we had to pick at the end of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and then we get back to the normal draft starting in the 5th. I think there it would make it very interesting, and it'd be much tougher to figure out if you would still want the 101, still want the 102, etc. But still, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to complain. We're going to lock in Mahomes. We're going to be very excited. I understand that maybe some people will be a little bit upset that this is super flex, but I do want to let you know, if you play in a 1 quarterback format, it's as simple as just going through and moving the players down the draft board, ladies and gentlemen. It's not too difficult. If you're playing that 1 quarterback format, instead, you should have Jefferson off 1, Chase off 2. I mean, in my mind, I think by far and away the best value here in round 1. I don't want to say by far and away, but I really like the Stroud-Burrow range here at 6 and 7. If you pull up my rankings on flogfantasy.com, you'll see that I personally have these guys much higher. I have Stroud and Burrow up there at around 3 or 4 in my own rankings on flogfantasy.com. And yes, I had an issue with the stream initially. So I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. You know, it would not be a Mason Dodd live stream if it wasn't for me finding a way to mess it up. But Sam Laporta off the board at the beginning of the 2nd round. I mean, he's clearly the number 1 tight end, right? I don't necessarily think anybody's going to debate that. So, I mean, if you're sitting here going, oh, okay, well, if you want to lock him in, number 1, if you think he is going to be Kelsey, and then by all means, go for it. If you were that excited, I can somewhat understand it. But let me go ahead and share my screen here just for a second. We probably should have done this at the very beginning. So I'm sorry. This is going to take up way too much of the screen initially, but we can get it set up. But I just want to be able to go through and use the community rankings here. Flogfantasy.com. Oh, the URL's nice and big there. But bada boom, bada bang there. Now we can address the rankings as we go through and make our picks. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs off the board right after Marvin. It is interesting to see Marvin here go behind A.J. Brown. I personally would prefer having Marvin ahead of A.J., ahead of Laporta. Bijan and Marvin for me are pretty much guys that we're going to be looking at back-to-back. We have Kyler Murray off the board 2 and 9. So it's interesting to be in a spot where this is that 3rd round reversal. So typically you would get, obviously, your pick at the 211, then you'd get the 302. But that's not going to be the case here. We're going to be picking at the end of the 2nd round, and then we are not going to be on the board for quite some time again. So with that being the situation, I think we go ahead. We just select Jordan Love. I think you can make a strong argument for some of the rookie quarterbacks if you wanted to go through and swing for someone a little more rushing upside over Love. But, I mean, if you're looking at the rankings on flogfantasy.com, while Jordan Love's a little bit lower in the sleeper ADP, on the site, you'll see that Jordan Love does hold that value as a mid-2nd round pick. I mean, in the community rankings on flogfantasy.com, he is ahead of Puka, who goes ahead of him in this. He is ahead of A.J. Brown, and he is ahead of Garrett Wilson. So it is interesting. We do have that rookie quarterback going immediately after in Jaden Daniels. Now, Sandy says, who's better for next season, Tyreek or Lamb? To be completely honest, I have no idea. Obviously, from a dynasty perspective, we'd have Lamb. And I know maybe from like an underdog perspective, you're going to say, well, Mason, I mean, we kind of got to figure it out. Who's going to be better between CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill? And I would love to sit here and act like I'm some kind of genius and I have a crystal ball and I'm going to know exactly what we are looking at. The reality is, I don't know. It's probably close to 50-50, at least with how things look right now. If Tyreek has an ADP that's higher than Lamb, I'll go ahead. I'll take Tyreek when I get the shot, just knowing, okay, if I'm going to draft like 200 teams, say, that Tyreek ends up being the 102, Lamb ends up being the 103 in ADP. If I'm at the 102, I should probably take Tyreek because I'm going to get Lamb at the 103, 104 regardless, right? So, I mean, a spot like that is one where I don't necessarily feel the need to go out there and plant some kind of massive flag, especially if the range of outcomes for both guys, I mean, they could be the number one wide receiver in fantasy. Now let's move this. I mean, Jonathan Taylor off the board, 306. Interesting selection to see Taylor go. I mean, obviously this is someone that gets a contract extension, and I think you can be very excited about the short term. I just think when you take someone like Taylor, you kind of pencil yourself into being a win now team. Whereas there are a couple assets that I still feel are more so cornerstone pieces and that you can go ahead, you can decide to contend now with, you can decide to build for the long term with. There are 3 guys that I'm looking at here. I don't want to be saying their names just because there's a shot that they come back around. So let me pull up the rankings on flogfantasy.com and figure out who's more likely to make it back to us. I think I know who's more likely to make it back, so we're going to pull the trigger on who in my mind is going to be the last quarterback in this tier in Dak Prescott. After Dak goes, you're looking at Fields, Goff, Watson, Young, Cousins. So I do think that you have a significant teardrop unless you wanted to go ahead and take J.J. McCarthy. Dak is young enough where I still think we have a lot of flexibility with how we take this team with Mahomes, Love, Dak. As Rome goes, Rome was going to be our guy here. Okay. Because we've built this team extremely flexible up to this point, I don't necessarily want to take an asset that can be viewed just as a win now piece, or maybe an asset that can kind of just be penciled in for long-term upside. So instead, we're going to take another cornerstone piece that gives us the flexibility later on in this draft to continue to go through and to continue to take kind of best player available here. So we will take Devon Smith. If you look at the rankings on the sites, Nico Collins is ahead of Smith. And honestly, I think there's a strong argument to be made that we should go ahead. We should take Nico over Smith. They're the same age. If we're looking at expectations going into this next season, I would say Nico Collins is being drafted higher in redraft leagues right now. So yeah, if we're looking at this, I mean, the expert rankings on the site have Nico Collins well ahead of Smith as well. I mean, Nico's 14, Smith is 15 in community rankings. That's free for anybody who wants to pull those up on flogfantasy.com, by the way. And then in the expert rankings, you have Nico Collins, wide receiver 15, and Devonta Smith down there, wide receiver 16, but with some of these running backs and et cetera that are ahead of him. Okay. But nonetheless, I think wide receiver with that profile is the right pick there. I just don't necessarily know if Smith is the exact guy. I think you can make an argument for a couple different players. And yes, of course, the draft is live. Brendan says Smith over Ayuk. I honestly don't feel too bad about going with Smith over Ayuk. I mean, let's go ahead and let's pull up their best respective seasons. Because Devonta Smith, younger than Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk going on to the second deal. I mean, Devonta Smith, I understand the Eagles failed down the stretch. But this is still a wide receiver that had the best collegiate season pretty much we've ever seen. Goes out there, turns into a league winner in his second season. Has eclipsed over 1,000 receiving yards in back-to-back years, been pretty consistent. So I'd say the best year that we've had from Smith so far was going back 2 years ago, 70 receiving yards per game, 136 targets, 95 receptions. Going over to Ayuk, Ayuk this past season put up a better season we've ever seen from Smith. So the question is, do you believe that Philly can go out there and can they bounce back as an offense overall? But JJ McCarthy at the 408 is a pick that I know people probably view as pretty aggressive at the moment, but honestly, if he turns out to be a quarterback that goes inside the top 5 picks of the NFL draft, based off the kind of job security that you're getting, I think you probably have to go out there and you have to say it's a decent value for McCarthy. Okay. So let's move around. So the best rookies available right now, according to ADP, are Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Adonai. Quarterbacks, you have Fields. Obviously, sleeper ADP is just bad. Please don't be using this if you're drafting a real league. Really, you have like Cousins, Stafford, Levis is the best quarterbacks. Maybe throw in Baker. Running back, you have the group of year 3 guys in Walker, White, Cook, Pacheco. Wide receiver, you have Metcalf, Addison, Diggs, Debo, Pickens, Adams. And then tight end, you have Andrews, Kincaid, Pitts. So Flowers off the board, I think that's a great pick with Zay Flowers. It looks like, in my mind, these year 2 wide receivers going in this round, I really like the price point you're getting. Okay, Justin Fields is autoed in front of us, giving us a gift of Jordan Addison. And yes, 100%. I mean, I was excited to draft Addison both in redraft leagues and in dynasty leagues early this offseason. And this is someone you have to be much more concerned about if you are now looking at Cousins being in Atlanta. But still, I mean, if you're looking at the prospect profile of Jordan Addison, if you're looking at what he did as a rookie and what kind of class that puts him in as a wide receiver, plus the fact we know typically it's a good idea to buy into these year 2 wide receivers that flashed year 1, I'm completely fine going through and paying the price point and just saying in Dynasty it's going to work itself out in the long run. Okay, so I think we're going to probably go back over to a rookie here. I think we're going to take Brian Thomas, who looks essentially locked and loaded into being a round 1 NFL draft pick at this point. This is also the, peak hype that we are going to have for this rookie class will be pretty much over the next month, right? So I could easily see us looking back and saying, by the time we get to, actually, yeah, I should have taken a tight end here. Oh, dear God. Let me go ahead. Brian Thomas Jr. pretty much looks like he's going to be the 109 at the moment. Where's the 109 valued in comparison to, let's use the expert rankings. Where's the 109 valued in comparison to some of these tight ends? So the expert rankings on the site, this is going to be the accumulation of my rankings, the guys at Fantasy Domain, the guys at Fantasy Stock Exchange, the guys at Dynasty Land Football. And yeah, you have Kyle Pitts right in between the 108 and 109. You have Mark Andrews there as well. So, I mean, if you're looking at that price, it probably does make a lot more sense to just invest into the tight ends unless we end up getting a beautiful landing spot for Brian Thomas, such as like the Buffalo Bills. Probably doesn't make a ton of sense to pull the trigger on the rookie there. And instead, we probably should go ahead and take one of the tight ends. Okay. Mindtrick says my last 2 picks were no-brainers, White and Higgins. Higgins going to 506. I do like that price point on T. Higgins. I actually like the price on Kincaid a lot as well. I think Kincaid, while yes, obviously this is someone that kind of disappointed down the stretch. Once you ended up getting Dawson Knox back in Buffalo, I think what's probably happening here is people are underestimating the rookie season that he had based off Sam Laporta being in the same season. Because typically you'd see a rookie year like what Dalton Kincaid did, and you go, okay, yeah, he flashed. He's a round 1 NFL draft pick, phenomenal offense going into the future. Now, I mean, you're not really having to worry about Dawson Knox going into the future. So Kincaid goes from being someone that I really didn't draft last year. I wish I drafted a ton of them. But to being someone that I think is a pretty damn good value here at the 609 now. Okay. Yeah, Brendan says he loves the Higgins value as well. I would be very surprised if Jerome Ford's going to be the starter going into the season. I mean, whether or not you think Nick Chubb's going to be fully healthy and Nick Chubb's going to be the guy, or if you think, I don't know, that they're going to go get someone in the draft, I would just be very surprised if, when it's all said and done, the Cleveland Browns go into the season with Jerome Ford as their week 1 starter. Now, Adonai off the board, 703. Devontae Adams goes 704. The best rookies available now are Worthy, Franklin, Penix, Ladd, Brooks, Corum, Benson. According to Sleeper ADP, best quarterbacks are Baker, Levis, Stafford, Rodgers. Best running backs are Spears, Javonte, Swift, Najee, Kamara. Best receivers are Diggs, Kupp, Evans, Watson, McLaurin. And tight ends, you have Kelsey, Kittle, and Njoku, Ferguson, and Ingram. Okay, Baker goes. We're not really focusing in too much on quarterback based off the selections we made with our first 3 guys. Diggs goes 709. I think Diggs was by far and away the best value. That's who we were taking if he made it to us. Swift goes 710. So I probably hate to do this, but I think we're going to have to. I think we may end up having to take Levis here. Clearly, we don't need a quarterback, but I mean, when it gets to the point where it's like, okay, are we taking Will Levis, Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp? And this is a team where we're more so focused in on having that, I want to say, long-term build now that we are taking guys like Addison, Brian Thomas. Obviously, it's still in the range of outcomes for Levis to come out this next season, Levis to just be very bad, and then all of a sudden he gets replaced going into 2025. That's in the range of outcomes, and it's 100% a possibility that he is not a starter next year. But also, I mean, out of everybody in this range, he's really the only guy that if he goes out there and if he crushes, he is valued significantly higher in Dynasty than where he is today. So from a value perspective, I think we're going to go ahead and take him. And now the issue is here, the best values in the board are Kupp and Kelce. While at the same time, we've essentially gone through and we penciled ourselves into a long-term build. We're going to go ahead and we're going to... That was probably a mistake. We're going to take Kupp. What is his underdog ADP? I'm going to show you where he is on the site real quick from a Dynasty perspective. Obviously, you're taking Kupp, though. 30-year-old wide receiver. You are more so just thinking long-term. He's wide receiver 31 if you're looking at community rankings. If you're looking at expert rankings on the site. Wide receiver 35. Right in line with like Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson, Javonte. Honestly, in this range, it's not like he's some massive value here. This is about where you'd expect him to go. I think Franklin fits the team a lot better. I just don't know if we can pull the trigger on him here. I'm going to go back just 2 seasons. Kupp is the pure league winner, where if you don't have him, you just have no shot at winning. He was drafted in 2017, same draft class that you have guys like CMC in. maybe we look back 12 months from now and say, oh, okay, I guess really what derailed Cup's 2023 season was just the fact that he was injured. Stafford wasn't 100. So maybe if Stafford's 100%, Cup's 100% going into this next year, we get a Cup bounce back, even if this is a team not ready to contend. We go through and look to sell him during the season. And of course, I'm sitting here doing everything I can to do some mental gymnastics to justify the pick. Amari goes here at the 809. If it wasn't for the Cleveland Browns going out there making multiple plays at the wide receiver position over the past few offseasons, bringing in Elijah Moore, bringing in Jerry Jeudy, paying a considerable amount of money to Jeudy. I mean, I'm not necessarily worried about those guys turning into the wide receiver one, right? But what it does go to show is it just kind of shows the overall thought process right now that the Cleveland Browns have regarding their wide receiver room, which clearly Amari was the guy that was there beforehand. Okay. James says, I have Olave, London, Pittman, 102, 108 in a Dynasty Superflex. Should I trade someone? And if so, who? I do not know, my friend. It obviously depends on the context of your situation that you're going into this next year. Are any of those guys raw sell high candidates? I would say that the ranking of Drake London in the community rankings at this point is extremely aggressive as wide receiver 8. I mean, we can go ahead and pull this up right now, but I mean, if you look at this, this is someone that has just absolutely skyrocketed as of late here, where he's been as high as wide receiver 7 up to wide receiver 8 earlier in the offseason. You had Drake London down as low as wide receiver 13. So if I'm looking at where you have London, if I could sell London for the 105 in a super flex format and go out there and bring in Malik Neighbors, I'm doing that. And based off the London hype, it is definitely a possibility. But I mean, obviously London's not someone you have to sell. He's a very talented wide receiver that's set up in a pretty good situation going into this next year. Okay, Franklin, Christian Watson, Deontay, all off the board. I mean, we're sitting here with 4 wide receivers, 3 quarterbacks, and nothing else. I will say, if we knew Stafford was going to make it back around to us, the Levis pick probably doesn't make too much sense. The issue is, if we were to not take Levis, who else were we going to go there at the 7-11? I mean, it just does seem like such a flat tier. And Stafford doesn't even make it. Do we take Godwin? Godwin in the community rankings sitting at 101. I think we may be going Godwin, because there are a couple different running backs that can make it back around to us. And I think Godwin does give us a little bit of a longer runway with these running backs as well, where, I mean, in the case of the RBs, these are pretty much guys you're taking for one season. Jonathan Brooks. Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I should have pulled up rookies. Phenomenal pick with Jonathan Brooks. Way better than my Chris Godwin pick. Keenan Allen goes, ooh, okay, we did not mean to do that. We are going to go ahead. We are going to be taking Trey Benson. We'll take Trey Benson, 10-02. Yes, if you look, this is a very bad rookie running back class. Yes, I'm not going to sit here and try my absolute hardest to sell you that Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson are stud running backs and they should be treated how Najee and Etienne were coming out. That they should be treated how Fournette and CMC were coming out. Of course not. But at the same time, while we know this is a very bad running back class, it is also, and we showed y'all the historical numbers behind this, by far and away the cheapest a running back class has ever been as rookies in fantasy football. It doesn't matter if you're looking at Dynasty ADP. It doesn't matter if you are looking at underdog ADP. Currently, these rookies are cheaper than they've ever been, dating back to 2014, so over the past 10 years. Not saying it's right or wrong, but it's a marketplace, right? So if trash is free, it may be worth picking up. Let me go ahead and let me show off this draft room here for everybody. So we are at pick 2. Keep in mind, this is a third round reversal, ladies and gentlemen. So that Dak Prescott pick, that's not the 302. That is the 311. So we have at quarterback, Mahomes, Love, Dak, Levis. Wide receiver, we are sitting with Smith, Addison, Brian Thomas, Chris Godwin, and Cooper Kupp. And then at running back, we have Trey Benson. So it's an interesting team in that this is a team that definitely is not going to be able to contend as is. If we wanted to contend, we would have to go out there and we would have to make a play, bring in a running back or two. And if we aren't contending, we have a few of these names that just simply don't belong because they're guaranteed to go down in dynasty value almost essentially. So we would be in the marketplace for sure having to sell Kupp, for sure having to sell Godwin. If I decided to turn this into a full-blown rebuild, I'd probably throw Love, Smith, Levis all in the trade block with that group of players, different than Kupp and Godwin in that they're not guys that we have to sell. It would come down to the price point that we'd get with them. Okay, now Thomas says Superflex, Dell, Dotson, or Metcalf, Jameson. I'm definitely going to go Tank Dell. I mean, if you're looking at Metcalf, 3 straight seasons as a high-end wide receiver 3 in fantasy. Dotson, Jameson, I don't think either really matters at the end of the day. Dotson has been productive at the NFL level where Jameson just simply is never. Okay, I was going to go Mixon if Mixon made it, but now that he's gone, none of the running backs are too appealing. I think we're going to go ahead. We'll pull the trigger on Cole Kmet. Kmet, younger tight ends. That's, I mean, has flashed some production. The issue that you're going to have with Cole Kmet is DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, both there. Even if this is the best offense that Chicago has seen in almost a decade, still there are going to be a lot more weapons than there have been in the past, especially when the Bears have pick 9, where some people are mocking them to go out there and take like Rome and just have the best wide receiver trio in the NFL. So it's going to be the target share for Kmet will be lower in Chicago than what we've seen in years past. But the bet that you're making when you're taking Kmet is even if the target share is lower, if the overall offense is much better, the net result may be that Kmet's a better option in fantasy. Okay, do we just double dip in tight ends? Actually, who are some rookies here? Let's go ahead. Let's take Roman Wilson. Throw on another rookie on this roster. I mean, I think you can make an argument to go through and take maybe a few of these tight ends like Frymuth. Frymuth was the next guy that we had pulled up, but I don't know. Let's have some fun. Let's get a rookie in here who has showed some upside, but I think that's all I have for y'all. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. We're going to be live tomorrow as well. And yeah, if you're not able to make it out tomorrow, wishing you happy Easter. Hope that you have a great day. Hopefully you're able to spend it with your family and friends. But thank you. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And hope we get to see you out in the live stream tomorrow night.